This is the official EFL podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show. Joining me this week to look ahead to the weekend action are Sky Sports Andy Hinchciffe, EFL on Quest's Michael Brown and Leyton Orient captain Jobi McAnuff. Andy, we're going to start this week by looking back at the third round action in the Carabao Cup, though. You were at MK Dons last night, a lot of teenage talent on show from Liverpool, of course. How beneficial is this competition for the younger players?
Well, it's probably a key element of their season, really. I think it's a cornerstone of their development. There's going to be kind of limited game time for them in the Premier League and the Champions League because that's understandable. They're Liverpool's priorities. Their big guns are going to play in those big games. But the domestic cups is where these young players could feature. Although Jurgen Klopp was saying after the game that he's still keen to play a lot of his senior players in the Carabao Cup because he's got a big squad to kind of choose from as well. But I'm hoping that he'll continue to kind of blend the youth and experience, and we get to see more of Elliott and Brewster, Jones, Hoover, Kelleher. I thought all of them looked really comfortable at Stadium MK, and I just think the key thing is nothing develops young players more than playing first team games in meaningful matches. You can do a lot of training around world-class players. Yes, that helps. But playing games in front of big crowds as well, that's another huge step forward for young players and absolutely key to their development.
Yeah, Michael, some almighty shocks as well in the competition. Colchester knocking out Spurs being the most notable, of course. How good is that to see the magic of the cup competitions is still there?
Well, the magic is there. I've always, for one, enjoyed playing in the cup competitions. When I was at Sheffield United, when you're obviously in the championship level and you play Premiership opposition, and even further, later on in my career when you're going down and playing in League One with Port Vale, you want to play against the bigger teams, and it's something to look forward to. I think is any players playing in the lower leagues, that's a dream. They're the ties they want. That's what they want to come up against and test themselves against these players. But what a result for Colchester. I mean, you must say, Spurs you had Sanchez, you had Dyer, Wanyama, Skip, Dele Alli, Davies, Mora. It's endless. And then they bring on Son, Ericsson and Lamella, and they still hold out. But you're just watching and you're looking as he scores the winning penalty, Ton Lapsey, and you think, what a feeling he must have had, that nerve, but to go on and score. I mean, it's just that's when it's special. And you're watching Rochdale and a 16-year-old scoring at Old Trafford, and these are memories. And the lads will tell you when you play and you get these things, you put your head on the pillow late at night and you just pinch yourself. And that's what we all have the love of football for. So some incredible shocks, brilliant from Oxford as well. They absolutely hammered the West Hammers and left them for dead, which was a great result again with having 6 changes for Carl Robinson.
Yeah, it seems to be what football's all about. Jobi, I know you won't have the fondest memories from this year's competition, having been knocked out in the first round, but how much hope does it give the lower league teams when we see results like that Colchester one?
Yeah, it's a brilliant result, and I think it's one that all players playing, certainly League One and League Two, they're games that you really, really look forward to. There'll be lads there that have never played against the likes of Wanyama and Lucas Moura, real top class international players, playing their trade in the Premier League, and you just want to go out there when you're at that level and show that you can compete with those guys. And if you perform to your ability and they have a slight off night, and the off nights don't just happen, it's what those teams are doing. Colchester went and they were very, very hard to beat, fought for every single ball there, and they force certain mistakes and knock Spurs out of their rhythm, really. And it's the same in all the other games, when you look at the likes of Oxford and even Burton, great result for them at home. Sunderland away from home at Sheffield United, and it's just great to see. And for me, I've always been a big fan of those competitions, and certainly as a lower league player, they're the games that you really, really look forward to being involved in.
Yeah, Andy, you of course took part in the draw last night, drew out some tasty ties as well for the fourth round. Which game are you looking forward to seeing
and
most?
Some bad ones as well, by the way.
Let's not focus on that.
I think naturally you look at those, the 2 big games featuring the Premier League giants. I think that is all well and good. But to me, Burton against Leicester really epitomises what this competition is all about. It's those, as the lads have been saying there, the lower league sides pitting themselves against Premier League opposition. Leicester are taking this competition really seriously, but after making the semis last season, I'm sure Nigel Clough will fancy his chances of a bit more giant killing as well. And although at the time, we made the draw and Crawley came out against Colchester, and I was a little bit disappointed, but actually, if you think about it, Crawley, Colchester, Oxford and Sunderland can actually get through. Two of those teams are going to get through to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. And they've got the prospect of facing a really big Premier League team as well in that quarterfinal. So I think it's really important that there's kind of lower league representation in the latter stages of this competition, because the Premier League teams are taking it more and more seriously year on year. So it's great that these clubs in Leagues 1 and 2 have an opportunity to play against big clubs, yes, but also in quarterfinals and maybe semi-finals as well. I think it's what the Carabao Cup is all about.
Yeah, Michael, as Andy mentions, Chelsea against Manchester United, Liverpool against Arsenal, some huge games there. A big chance for those teams who get through to those games to win a trophy, do you feel?
Well, very much so. But the key is going to be is like personnel. You see all of the changes, that when you get Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, the pressure increases not to make those amount of changes. Possibly for Liverpool, as we know, they've had such a successful year that they might feel that they will still do that. But the likes of Manchester United going to Chelsea, that'll be a difficult one for them. But we're still seeing young players. We've seen Billy Gilmore last night come through and be a wonderful performance for Chelsea. I remember meeting him when he was only 15 at leaving Glasgow Rangers, and he had the choice to go to Chelsea. These are the opportunities. So hopefully these clubs will still allow these players to get some minutes and even bigger games, bigger ties. And that's what it's about. But like Andy's just said there, it's still great looking at the ties with Crawley, Colchester, Oxford, Sunderland. And again, look at the progression for Burton Albion last year when they went to Manchester City, and seeing what that hype does for the football club. And financially, you can help you for several seasons. So it's a great competition and some great ties.
Yeah, Jobi, Andy and Michael both sort of stolen my next point there, but a more low-key affair between Crawley and Colchester, of course. But what an opportunity for them to League Two teams to get to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we spoke about it briefly before coming on air, and I think there's two ways you look at it. I think initially probably be a little bit disappointed if you were in the Crawley or Colchester camp. With some of the big teams that are left in, you want to go and you want to go to an Anfield or a Man City or a Chelsea and really sort of pit yourself against one of the top teams. I think once the dust settles, though, they're now looking at what is a real fantastic opportunity, first and foremost to get to the quarterfinals, which is an achievement in itself. And then having come through that, you're then going to get realistically one of the big clubs, and I think for them, that would be a massive incentive, in that game. I'm sure they both really fancy their chances, and I'm sure it will make for a really, really interesting game there with a lot at stake.
Yeah, of course, Bradford reaching the final from Sky Bet League 2 6 years ago now, so that really does show you that anything really is possible in this competition. Now let's bring on the preview, starting with Friday night between Stoke and Nottingham Forest in the Sky Bet Championship, first of all, Andy. Bringing it back to the Carabao Cup, though, as well, Nathan Jones was clearly livid with his team going out to Crawley in midweek, saying they were nowhere near good enough. Is this match now about getting a reaction for him, do you feel?
Well, clearly at Stoke, something needs to happen. Something has to be the catalyst to kind of spark the season and get Stoke moving in the right direction. Maybe, just maybe, the defeat to Crawley is where the tide turns. But I do feel if they do lose Stoke to Forest, Nathan could be pretty much finished. It must be so frustrating for a coach, because I've watched a lot of the Stoke games and their underlying performances have not actually been that terrible. But if you don't take your chances, if you make defensive errors, your goalkeeper spills the ball into the back of his net as well, it's impossible to win games. And I just wonder how much more patience the Stoke board have. But also, in listening to what was being said by Nathan after the game as well, it's talking about the manner of the defeat to Crawley. Not just that you lose the game, that's bad enough, but how you lose it. And if this coach starts talking about that as well, like maybe the attitude and the level of performance, that is another major cause for concern. So in a way, I'm a little bit surprised Nathan has kind of flagged this up, even though it was pretty obvious. But I do feel it's in kind of a last chance saloon really on Friday night.
Yeah, Michael, I've got a lot of different quotes from this press conference from Nathan Jones, but he also said midweek that being a championship manager is no fun. I know you can't put a positive spin on Stoke's record, but does that tell us that the negativity around the place is starting to get to him now as well?
Well, I think I'd look and say it's no fun. I'd say, well, why is he doing it? Because you'd want to be enjoying your job and a role of obviously managing Stoke City, a huge club, and that must be probably a quote he maybe regrets saying. It's no fun at the moment, I would say, for him when he's not getting those results. And that's the point. You're heavily feeling all of these results, and you're under pressure. And just reading now today, he's not made his press conference, which there would have been all the big questions ready leading up into the game tomorrow. But he sent Paul Hart in because he's having a planned lunch dinner with the chairman, Peter Coates, which is very strange that they have that time and not to make it. But he will do his TV interviews going forward. But Paul Hart's been asked, is it possible that relegation's weighing heavily? He said he doesn't live in fantasy land. People around me can see and make sure they don't believe that it can't happen also. But it is in September and he doesn't believe it will go down. So the pressure's building there for an experienced ex-Nottingham Forest manager taking the questions for them. So the pressure's certainly on there. There's lots of change around in personnel we've discussed over the weeks, but this is probably going to be that must-win game if he comes through the meeting with Peter Coates today.
Yeah, Jobi, of course, referring back to midweek, there's so many quotes again for concern coming from that post-match press conference, and another one where Jones referred to the first half and said it was as bad a 45 minutes he's seen as a manager. How bad would that make you feel as a player hearing that? Is this game now win or bust for him?
I think he's certainly on the brink. The midweek result has obviously piled on the pressure, and when you really read through some of those comments, for me as a player, I was never ever had a problem with a manager saying, questioning players within the sort of inner sanctum of that dressing room. For me, that's your opportunity to say what you want and not having to worry about it coming out. Once you start going in the media and you start, some of the stuff he's saying, no commitment, no desire, we've got out-battled and out-fought. And then he even asked, whether the players wanted to play for him. And for me, that would be certainly ringing alarm bells. If I was a player in that dressing room right now, I'd be hopefully one of the ones trying to get things back on track and keep things together. And for me, it just shows a real disconnect really between the managers and the players at the moment. And for me, again, that starts a real slippery slope. And I think this result will be pivotal to his future, certainly.
And I think we all know how difficult it is. So we talk about it all the time about kind of coaches losing the dressing room. And if you've got a lot of senior players in there as well, which Stoke do have, he signed a lot of senior players to the club as well, Nathan. If they don't believe in what you're doing or feel that you're not the right man, very quickly things can go downhill, and the coach can't really survive that once the players decide that he's kind of not for them.
Well, I think you start seeing the fans as well, because you're giving them that opportunity now to see those quotes. They might start asking questions now, and the hierarchy at the club, if he can't get those players to perform for him, which is what he's really saying now, then they might think, well, that's it now, he's not the right man for the job. So it was really, really interesting, those quotes and how strong they were, coming out post-game, really.
Yeah, changing the focus now, though. I know they were thrashed in midweek by Arsenal, but a brilliant start to the season for Nottingham Forest, Andy. What has Sabri Lamouchi got right there, do you feel?
Is pretty much everything, but you have to consider what little preparation time he had. Of course, Martin O'Neill leaving and Lamouchi coming in. It's been one of the stories of the Championship so far, and if you look at how they played and how the results that they've got, it's all down to consistency and balance. He's got a really settled system. They're playing 4-1-4-1 pretty much every week, so there's no confusion for the players. They've got the third best defence in the Championship. That's no surprise. They've got Dawson and Worrell at the heart of that defence. They've got Ben Watson kind of underpinning the midfield. They've got creativity with Joe Lolly. They've got a goal scorer in Lewis Graben. So if you're looking for elements that a team needs to succeed, Forest are ticking all the boxes. So there's no real surprise that they've been unbeaten since the opening day. They've drawn with Leeds. They've beaten Fulham and Swansea. So I think their early season success is unexpected because of, again, a coach coming in so late in the day and just basically the start of pre-season. But they absolutely deserve to be in the top six. They've been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Michael, unbeaten in 7 matches now as well, Forest. Up to 6th. Should their ambition be looking towards even the automatic spots now, do you feel?
I think you've just got to look and say, obviously, new manager, let's just take each game. And I know that sounds a little bit sort of conservative, but you've got to do that. I think it's the Championship. We know how hard it can be over the season. And as a new manager coming into it, you'll be looking at past experiences of the loading, when the games are, how you do things. But the confidence will be there. Going away, as Andy's just said, to the likes of Leeds, going winning at Swansea, Ben Watson scoring his first goal for Forest, that'll give him confidence. He's getting a bit old now. I give him a little bit of stick, Ben. But one of his most famous goals, as we know, is in the FA Cup final. So maybe he gets his goal rush back on. But he's, it just seems to have a great spirit. I was reading an article on Joe Lolly about singing the praises of the manager, saying how thorough he is, and possibly a different style where Martin O'Neill would be very old school, very much sort it out for yourselves, players, and type of a motivational, where he's come in and put a little bit of a different structure in place. And they seem to be enjoying it. They seem to be working very hard and going away to Fulham. I thought the shape was excellent, very hard to beat. And I think that they're certainly in the right place, but there's a long way to go for them.
Yeah, Jobi, Forest, as Andy mentioned earlier, had that upheaval in pre-season with Lamouchi replacing Martin O'Neill later on. How do you explain that positive start? From the outside looking in, what would seem, to be not the ideal preparation for a championship campaign?
Well, it's interesting. We talk about formations, organisation, the tactical elements. But I think for me, a big part of why Martin O'Neill left in the first place was the environment. And, we've spoken a little bit about, senior players. Once you start losing them, it can really have a negative impact on, the manager's situation. It seems as though Forest didn't bow to it straight away, the back end of last year, and were willing to see how things went, during pre-season. But by all accounts, those things didn't improve. Players, you hear them very disillusioned with life under Martin O'Neill, and, a real negative atmosphere around the place. And, sometimes you need that enjoyment, you need that fun element, going into work every day, what can be quite a high pressured, game, especially at a club like Forest and the expectation that's on them. So, I think the enjoyment factor is a big part of why they've started so well this year, and it certainly seem to be enjoying it with the results they're getting recently.
Stoke fans clearly not enjoying the football at the moment, but if you're looking for a little bit of optimism for them, they haven't lost a home game to Forest for 25 years. So yeah, maybe something to hang on to there for you guys. And moving on now to the early kickoff on Saturday, though, QPR taking on West Brom, Andy. QPR, another surprise package this season, of course, but is this match the biggest test of their season so far, do you believe?
Yeah, it must be pretty close to. They have had a couple of tough games against Bristol City and Swansea, and they lost both those games. So clearly they have found it tough against those high-flying sides. But it's a good time for QPR to play West Brom. I feel that West Brom are nowhere near kind of the level that Slaven Bilic wants as yet. That's understandable. It will take some time. They will get better and better as the season goes on. But Rangers run a run of 4 straight wins. The confidence is sky high. Mark's kind of tinkered with the system as well. He played a back three in the last couple of games. So they got Hugill and Wells as a genuine front two, that classic little and large kind of attacking combination that's proving a real handful. So they should be really optimistic about their chances going into the game. We probably expect West Brom to be up there top 6 at the end of the season. But Forest and QPR, the way that they've started the season, they deserve to be where they are. And Mark Warburton is a really clever coach as well. And he inherited a really difficult situation at QPR with the financial kind of constraints. And there was a lot of reliance on young players. But they have some very good young players at that club as well. And he's brought in, signing Hugill, again, you can say well, that's a no-brainer. But I'm sure Hugill could have had offers from other clubs. But for QPR to have got him, I think that was a big plus as well. So they've got a good balance in terms of kind of youth and experience in the team.
Yeah, Michael, as Andy there mentioned, Wells and Hugill forming a formidable partnership as well. How important has it been for them to both hit the ground running this season? It's not always the norm nowadays.
Well, I think that's the key, isn't it? It's down to confidence. And when you start well, these players now much more experienced. He's 29 now, Naki Wells, and he's been around again with Hugill. Set certain clubs, different environment. When they score goals, that seems to be when they get that confidence, and that's always the case. And I think Mark Warburton's brought such a positivity around the players. I wasn't sure what type of squad, what type of finish QPR would have this season, but to start like they have, both getting 5 goals, and it's some return really from Wells, who only got 7 goals, previously. So that's a quick return, and I'm sure with those two and that confidence there, I'm sure they'll keep getting goals, but it will be difficult again, this West Brom side.
Yeah, Jobi, is the concern though for Mark Warburton's side that they do concede so many goals? We've talked about how good they are going forward, but they haven't actually had a clean sheet all season yet.
Yeah, I think when you look at the amount of goals they've conceded, I think there's only 4 or 5 teams that have conceded more than them in the league this year. I think over the course of a season, that would certainly be a concern for them. But at the other end of the pitch, they're certainly sticking the ball away. One of the top scorers in the leagues, and I think it's an indication of the type of football he likes to play. Very open and real good footballing team. And I think when you play like that, you're always going to leave yourself a little bit susceptible to conceding goals. But for me, if they're going to be a real threat for that top 6, which they are at the moment, that's certainly one area they'll have to look to improve. But they're flying at the moment on a really, really good run. He's done a brilliant job so far. The players there seem to have really warmed to him and have bought into his way of doing things. And unlike a couple of the other clubs we've spoken about, that can be a real powerful thing when everyone's on the same page. Yeah,
and in terms of chances created as well, these two sides are the best in the division apart from Leeds. Should we expect goals from this match, do you think?
Now, hang on a minute. This is a kiss of death. If I say, yeah, you know it's going to be 0-0, but I'll be wildly optimistic and I'll go for 2-2. Although I do think it will be a tight game and it could be 1-0 either way. But overall, it's not necessarily about the scoreline. It's just really a gauge for maybe how seriously to take QPR, because we probably know that West Brom, with Slaven in charge, with the squad that they've got, they're guaranteed pretty much to be in the top 6. But it's about QPR. Do they have the ability to kind of sustain a challenge this season? Because that's what any league is about, and the Championship is about. It's about grinding out, and it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think this game will be a really good pointer as to whether we take Queen's Park Rangers really seriously in terms of challenging for promotion.
Yeah, Michael, West Brom's still unbeaten though, of course. What does that say about the spirit of this team?
I think it says it's a good spirit, but you'd expect that from the manager. But the players they've got experience. Sawyers, Livermore, Austin. So you would expect that type of belief. They've got great ability. And going to QPR, I think they played them twice last season, scored 10 goals. So I'm sure they'll be trying to put them straight on the back foot, trying to put pressure on them. And that's the key. They feel that they've got the experience to go on. And looking at that, when you say unbeaten, that's a great respect to the squad and the players to have that desire. They're going behind in games, but they're coming back. They're having that belief, and obviously Huddersfield to go right to the end to get that late winner. And it's been a steady start, and I expect them to be right at the top at the end of the season.
Yeah, Jobi, I know I've talked about this point quite a lot with you as well after you mentioned it a few weeks ago on the podcast, but West Brom are continuing to concede the first goals in games quite a lot, trailing twice, obviously, against Huddersfield last week. Will that catch up on West Brom at some point, do you feel?
Well, I've spoke about it a few times, and maybe it's us that have got it all the wrong way around. I think it doesn't seem to be doing any harm for them. As I say, it's something we've picked up on, and it still happened again, even against Huddersfield. They were behind twice in the game, but managed to come through, and probably a little bit fortunate against Huddersfield in the respect that they just can't seem to win a game at the moment. And maybe, my concern for them is against the better teams, giving up them goals early on, it's going to be harder and harder. And particularly as the season wears on and the games become tighter, I think it could become a problem. I know Slaven wasn't very happy with the first half performance, and again against those better teams, you can't afford to not be at it for a half of the football. So it's something I'm sure they're looking at, but it doesn't seem to be affecting them too much at the moment with their current form.
Yeah, certainly isn't affecting them. 15 of the 16 points this season coming from losing positions, the highest in the entire EFL so far. Moving on now to the Sunday match, Andy, where Barnsley take on Brentford. I'm quite surprised to see both teams near the bottom of the table, but Barnsley haven't won since that shock opening day win against Fulham. How concerning is it for a newly promoted team that they haven't carried on their momentum from last season?
I think it is very tricky when you step up a league, whether it be League 2 to League 1 or up into the Championship from League 1. It's really tough. I think there's no guarantees that things are going to go well. The main problem for Barnsley this season has been a lack of goals, which clearly wasn't a problem last season. They've only scored 4. That's the lowest in the Championship. But you have to remember they lost their top scorer from last season, Kiefer Moore. That has a big effect on the team's chances in games and also on dressing room morale when you lose your top scorer. Cauley Woodrow got 16 last season. He scored just once this season. They are creating chances, but they're just not taking them. So I think when you've got that lack of a regular flow of goals, it's really debilitating. I think players get very nervous when they feel the chances of scoring aren't there for one reason or another. I do feel it's a really tough season ahead for Barnsley if things don't change. But I'm not actually that surprised when you take a top scorer out of a promoted team. It can have a huge effect on them. I think Barnsley are suffering for that. But again, they're not playing maybe that badly. They maybe don't deserve to be right down where they are. But again, you've got to start sticking the ball in the net. You can't pass up chances. You step up a division, you've got to take those chances when you make them.
Yeah, Michael Andy's talked about it there, but Daniel Stendhal, of course, played that wonderful football last season in League One. But how big is that step up from League One to the Championship, do you feel?
I think you've just got to look at their squad. It was always going to be a huge challenge in the Championship. And it's one, playing that wonderful, attractive football, the nice style. We all want to see that. But then when you go up into a higher league, how do you change? How do you get results? Do you stick to that philosophy? Do you feel like that's going to make you win games? But then confidence is key. You look, are you still as confident when you're rolling out from the back, playing it into midfield, turning around, keeping the ball moving? And you've got to create these opportunities. And it does get tough for them. And I think, after the start they had, as Andy mentioned there, Fulham, you'd have expected them to get the confidence early. But there's some tough teams. And yes, they've just recently played Leeds United, Nottingham Forest. So they're playing the teams who are doing very, very well. And it's always going to be tough. And I think the one that will disappoint them when you're at home to Luton, that'll be a one that have sort of said, we didn't do well that night. That's a one where they'd say they need to have progressed with. But, listen, it's going to be long. And as you mentioned, it's going to be a real tough season for them. But, they're still in it.
Yeah, Jobi, you know this feeling more than most, obviously doing it this season, stepping up from the National League last season. Does it take time for the players to get used to a division sometimes?
Yeah, most certainly, especially one that is so demanding. And for me, there is a bit of a step, from League One up to Championship, probably more so than certainly League Two to League One, and I think it just takes a little bit of time sometimes. And again, looking at, some of the results and some of the performances, they've been in a lot of the games, and there's not massive amounts of margin. So I'm sure there'll be enough there for them to be confident enough they can start picking up results. As Andy touched on, I think the goal scoring's a massive factor. And, we sort of had a similar thing at our place, losing two lads that are, sticking the ball away consistently. And sometimes when you're just in games and doing okay, you just need that player just to pop up with that goal that can get you a result. And they seem to be just lacking that at the moment. So, as I say, early days still, and I'm sure whilst the players are still adjusting, they'll feel that they can get themselves going.
Yeah, Andy, looking at Brentford now, though, and I said I was surprised they were down in 17th. Statistically, based on chances created and conceded, they should be up in fourth place in the league. Is that a sign that things will turn a corner for them at some point?
Well, I think we've been saying this about Brentford for a number of seasons now. They're always top six in terms of their performances, but they always seem to end up at best in kind of mid-table. And you put about the law of averages, say that everything will eventually fall into place and Brentford will fly and they'll get where they deserve to be. But when is that going to happen? And they have the problem that they keep losing their best players as well. I know this is maybe part of the policy at Brentford. They've lost Sawyers and Morpay. They could lose Watkins, Benrahma. Henry could go in January as well. So it's really hard to stay competitive when you're constantly revamping the squad and losing your best players. I think, again, this season, we've seen how good they can be. They absolutely battered Derby, beat them 3-0. And it's just, again, finding that consistency. But they tend to play in the same way in every game. But as we saw last season, they don't tend to take their chances. And if they did, they would comfortably be in the top six. But it's just finding that consistency. And when is it going to happen to Brentford? Because we've been talking about them for 3 or 4 years. They've been one of the best sides in the Championship, but they never seem to get close to the playoffs. And that needs to change. And it really needs to be this season.
Yeah, Michael, Andy seeming to get a little bit impatient with Brentford there. Thomas Frank's side were a lot of people's dark horses for promotion at the start of the season. Do you think they've struggled a little bit with that growing weight of expectation?
Well, I think you've got to be realistic. As we've mentioned about the signings, you lose your centre forward for £20 million in the Championship. I mean, we've got to give them some credit. That's always going to be tough. 3 players gone out. You're bringing in £33 million or so, and you're expecting then promotion. And it's going to be difficult. And I think you understand, yes, they create chances, they're playing the right way. They've got to put those away, but still, it just takes time. And I just think ultimately, I think they're a little bit behind in their team selection when you look at others, and that's the simple fact. You talk about expectation, because they have done well, but when they keep selling these players, I think you've got to be realistic, and you've got to understand the manager's problems.
Yeah, Jobi, we talked about Brentford on last week's show, about them struggling for consistency, of course. But do you think in time they will put a run together?
If you look at, as you say, expected goals or chances created, then you'd like to think so. But it's about a lot more than that for me in a league that is very unforgiving. And I think their problem is just that inconsistency, when you look at the results and the performance levels as well, where they can be, so good one week and then pretty abject the week after, and for me, that is only going to end one way, and that's having a, pretty average season, really. I just think they need to really try and find a way of dogging out those results, on the tough Tuesday nights away from home. I think when things are on their terms, they're a good footballing team. But as the other guys have alluded to, losing those players, but that creates that inconsistency. They're never able to hang on to those players that they could really build something with and maybe get promoted and move into the Premier League, with those players and give them an opportunity there. So I think it's the model of the club. They have to expect some inconsistency with how they do things. We've touched on the financial aspects, and from that point of view, they've done really, really well. But at the back of that, it creates that little bit of inconsistency on the pitch, I feel.
Yeah, despite those chances created, as we mentioned, being high up in the table, these two sides are the 2 lowest scoring in the Championship this season. Let's hope that stat changes this weekend. Now moving on to our featured game in League One, which is Coventry taking on Doncaster, Andy. Starting with Coventry, unbeaten start for Mark Robins' side, up in second place, scoring a lot of late goals to get results as well. What does that say about this team?
Well, they're clearly a fit side, and they've got the desire to go right to the end of games. But it's wrong to label Coventry as just a last gasp team. They're so much more than that. If you look at their stats, they're the 5th highest scorers in the division. They've had 10 different goal scorers, so there's threats from all over the pitch. They've got the 4th best defence in the league as well. So Mark, we talked about balance earlier with other clubs as well, he's got the balance right to have a really successful season. So if you ally that to high fitness levels and a desire to keep going, you can see why they're riding high. But I think in this game, it's the home form which is the clincher for Coventry. They've won every single home game so far, and I think it'll be a tight game, but I see them winning again 1-0.
Yeah, Michael, Andy's stealing my point there again. But despite having the issue of playing home games in Birmingham, of course, they've really made St Andrews quite a fortress, like Andy says, winning all 5 of their league matches this season at home. Tough ask for Doncaster to get a result in this one, do you think?
Well, I think Mark Robins, for starters, will probably want to stay at Birmingham City, won't he, play there? So it's just a case of, Doncaster, what they're going to bring. I think they're sat in a good position in the league. I think it will be tough. But I think with Darren Moore at the helm, it's you're going to have a very much work ethic team. Defensively, you would expect them to do okay. I think they've not gone away much this season already. They got to Rochdale, got that a 1-1, and Ipswich away will give them that confidence to go to the top teams and get coming away with the goalless draw. So they'll be keeping it tight. They'll understand Coventry's threat and the confidence that they have, but I'm sure that they don't have anything to fear. And I won't be surprised if Doncaster can go and do very well in the game.
Yeah, Jobi, and a win for Darren Moore's side against who everyone perceived to be the league's informed team in Peterborough last week as well. It shows you that Doncaster have that ability to step up in these big games, doesn't it?
Oh, most definitely. You only have to look at the start they've made. Probably a little bit under the radar, really. They've only lost 1 game, and it's obviously a very, very hard team to beat. And obviously, as Michael said, they're very, very well organised and very disciplined in their approach. It was really good to see James Corcoran popping up with a goal the other day, representing the Golden Oldies. I fancy them to go to nick a point away from home, to be honest. And I think Darren Moore's doing a really, really good job there so far, and a really solid start to the season.
But only, one win in their last 12 away games for Doncaster. So it should be a tough ask for them to get all 3 points. Now to our featured game in League Two, last but not least, third placed Cheltenham taking on second placed Crewe. Andy, both sides clearly banging form. Cheltenham 4 wins on the spin. What is it like going into games where you're full of confidence, but taking on a team who are also full of confidence?
Like two boxers who both have kind of great knockout punches squaring up. You've no idea who will kind of land that killer blow. It could easily go either way. I do feel Cheltenham are probably the more rounded side, looking at how they've kind of performed so far this season. Crewe are a hit and miss at home. They've won 3, they've lost 2. So, Ben, I'm hoping the fence is nice and sturdy, because you know what? I'm going to sit squarely on it. We're going to get a good game, an exciting game. But come
on, Andy, give us a result. Come on, Andy.
It'll be a 1-1 draw. That's what I'm going for.
A fence sitting clearly there from Andy Hinchciffe. Michael, one of your former teammates, Luke Varney, Jobi McAnuff mentions there, the golden oldies. He's clearly doing the business for Cheltenham as well, at the age of 36, playing up front. Does that make you want to get your boots back on as well?
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't mind being in the dressing room with Luke Varney. He does make you laugh every day. I think he's a great character, and there's not many left in it. 36, he'll obviously trying to just see out the last couple of years. And you know what he is? He's that threat. He's good in the air. He's got that little bit of pace on your shoulder. It's great to see. And, you talk about boots back on. I went and actually watched Macclesfield versus Port Vale the other night, and I thought I had half a chance sitting as the holding one. But maybe I was kidding myself, because I'm not too fit anymore. But, it's in you, isn't it? Football, you want to carry on. You want to keep playing. And it's great that the likes of Luke Varney at age 36 wants to keep doing that, and rightly so. He's scoring goals, and it's a good place. It's a good place when you have that confidence when you're scoring goals. And I keep saying that word, confidence, and it comes down to that belief. So we've got 2 good sides there who are on top of the game, and hopefully it'll be a fantastic game, and it'll be great to see Luke Varney get another goal.
You hear the sigh of relief around the country as all midfielders thought, thank God.
You're not wrong.
I'm not going to put his boots on and go around kicking me again.
Would I do that, Andy? Never. Never.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of players would have looked forward to that. Jobi, we've talked about the golden oldies there. At the start of the podcast, we talked about the younger players getting their chance to shine in the Carabao Cup, of course, but 8 out of Crewe's 11 last week were academy graduates. How incredible a stat is that?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think Crewe have got a really good history and reputation of developing young talent and giving them an opportunity. In the league, it seems to be, a real principle of the football club there to give the young players opportunities. And then, once, they're good enough, they obviously give them a path to go on and play at a higher level. So, having come up against them this year, I was, pretty impressed given, the young nature of the team. I was in a pretty young team when I first started out at Wimbledon. And I think that youth, when there's sort of, probably had 4 or 5 of us at the time, not as many as 8, but a good group of young lads in the squad, in the team, travelling together, and you can really get on a real positive buzz, really, and you don't have the same fears, I suppose, and reservations as maybe you do as you get a little bit older with that experience. So I certainly think that's helping them, to the start that they've had, and again, coming back to that enjoyment when they always seem to be enjoying themselves. Great result last time out, against Salford City, and certainly ones to watch.
Yeah, it should be an incredible match. Let's hope Andy Hinchciffe hasn't put the kiss of death on that one as well. Jobi, I just want to touch on before we go, Leyton Orient, Ross Embleton stepping down as your manager this week to revert to his position as assistant. A tough time for you guys at the minute. What's the mood like in the camp?
It's actually not too bad, I've got to be honest. Obviously disappointed with the results, but we feel we've been in pretty much all the games. No one's really come and really turned us over, bar in the first half against a pretty good Swindon team. And we feel really close. We're letting in some goals at real bad times, whether it be the start of the game or towards the end. And it's just about really nailing down a few things. And from Ross's point of view, he came and stepped up at a time that was very much needed. I think it was an incredibly brave decision to start with. Stepping into the shoes of Justin after he passed, and it's what the club really needed. It gave us a vital amount of time to just really try and stabilise and get to grips with everything and give us that platform to move forward as a club. So from certainly my point of view and everyone connected with Leyton Orient, we're obviously grateful that he stepped up at that time. He's had a period of time now to figure things out himself. I think decide if it's something he really wants to do. And, he came to the conclusion that at this moment of his career, being the manager, wasn't for him. And again, I think that takes a lot of bravery to hold your hands up and, admit that that's not quite your bag at this moment in time. So, the club are obviously moving forward now and looking to appoint a successor. And I think whatever the case, whether he wanted to carry on or not, it was important to get a bit of clarity at the club. I don't think as the weeks went on, the interim situation was really helping. It can create a little bit of uncertainty around the place. And I think we're all glad now that we're going to be moving in a forward direction. And once the new manager's in, we can really just get our heads down and crack on and, really establish ourselves in the league.
Jobi, can I just ask you a quick question about we know the influence that coaches have on players, but do players still get together? Do the senior players or the squad sit down together and thrash things out, or do they wait for the coaches to deal with these things? Or is it something the players still kind of talk about amongst themselves?
No, we've been fairly fortunate here. We, have I suppose what we'd call a leadership group, I suppose, some of the senior players, and it's worked well at a few other clubs I've had. It's about getting the right characters, I think, as well. We've seen at some other clubs where if something's not quite well for one of them, then they could start trying to, turn a few heads. But no, we're very much a group of lads there with the senior ones that, have obviously trying to help things go along. Obviously, Ross being his first real job, giving him the support that he needs, and certainly trying to deal with a few of the issues that we've had in the start of the season. I think we do have to take collective responsibility, and we've certainly tried to do that. But I think ultimately, that leadership and that figurehead is so important. And as I say, we'll all be glad when the new man comes in.
Yeah, it's great to hear that players still have that level of concern for kind of individuals, maybe coaches and the club as well, because a lot of maybe fans look at clubs and think players are just mercenary and it's all about themselves. But it's really kind of heartening to hear that players do want to do what's best for everybody.
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest, that's been a big part of the success. I think is getting that buy-in, as I say, from the senior lads, which is just crucial, really, whether it is supporting, the management and the coaching team, but also for the young lads and getting around them. And at the end of the day, we all want to succeed. And I'm sure I speak, for all of us, the successful teams we've been in, you've had that, the good groups of lads and the ones that really pull things together when times aren't quite right, and I think that certainly helped us through this little sticky patch at the moment. And, we're looking forward to coming out the other end of it and really kicking on in the league. Yeah,
Ross even gave you that nice little mention in midweek as well to say the squad really miss you, Jobi. When are you back in action? We've been talking about it for a while now, but when will we see you back in the EFL?
Well, I nearly wasn't when I heard Brownie was going to stick his boots on. To be honest. It's been going well up to that point. But no, I'm hoping. I've been back training fully. I did a big 11v11 yesterday, which was good, just blowing a few of the cobwebs out and no real reaction.
Come on, mate, just get on with it. You've been for it ages.
No
just
real. I need to get back before the new manager comes in. Otherwise, he might not pick me. So, yeah, I'm hoping. We've got a Leyton.com game against AFC Wimbledon in about 10 days. So I'm hoping to get out for that if everything goes well in the next 10 days or so.
Fantastic. Good luck with that, Jobi. And thanks, guys, for all your time this week. And have a great weekend.
Yeah,
pleasure.
Good weekend,
good to speak to you guys. Take care.
The official EFL podcast. The best reaction to all the match action. Available every week.